Hello everybody, Kit Cummings, Power of Peace Project. Thank you so much for stopping by for part 2 of the George Floyd protests. First of all, as I said last week, in part 1, which seemed to resonate with people, about 10,000 people have viewed it, a little over in the past week, and a couple hundred shares. So this is something that's resonating with people. And over the past 3 months, things have changed. We were watching the news late last night, just kind of checking in before we hit the bed. And there was a newscaster, and she said this, and I caught it, is if you're going to the protest this week, please wear a mask. And I asked my wife, I said, man, if 3 months ago, somebody told us that this was going to be the new normal, because I was sitting there going, all right, yeah, that's probably a good idea. And then it struck me, good Lord, in 3 months, things have turned upside down, and we're already kind of getting used to it just a little bit, but I think everybody's got an opinion. Mine is, today, again, I'm going to talk about some things that, are you got to be a little careful for a brother of less color, because there's so many people that care so deeply about these issues, maybe more so than ever before. People are starting to speak out that typically didn't talk about these things. It is the conversation. And so today, just to set this up, I'm going into an area that we kind of left off on last week. And I want to ask you ahead of time, are you open to changing your mind? Today, man, if I'm not open to changing my mind, then shame on me. Because I need to really have convictions about what I believe, but I also need to listen to the other. And we want everybody else to hear our opinion. We want everybody else to change their mind. But there's a lot of people out there today that aren't willing to change their mind or change their position. Heck, over the past week, man, I've kind of changed some things that I saw. Over the past 10 years, I've been doing work in prisons, bringing peace movements to prisons, and resolving conflict between rival gangs in dangerous maximum security prisons. But I've also been working with the youth and trying to mobilize them around this power that they have, this voice that they have. And so I've been working a lot in the schools over the past decade, but I've also been working with law enforcement and seeing the beauty and the passion. There's so many police chiefs and officers that I care about so much that are hurting so bad right now. And so last week it was, man, put yourself in the place of the looter and try to figure out what in the world drove that young man, young woman to do such a thing. Man, put yourself in the shoes of the officer. It's got to suit up and do it again tonight, not knowing what's going to happen to them. And imagine the one that has a wife that's crying, that has a mother that's praying, that have kids watching their father and mother go into this thing that we're watching. Can you become the other? Man, try to put yourself in the place of the young Black Lives Matter marcher, protester, the peaceful protest, trying to follow the Kings and the Gandhis and the Mandelas. This is their time. My question is, can you change your mind? And can you become the other? Last 10 years, I've been trying to become the other. Feel the brother of more color. Feel the people south of the border. Really feel the officers and feel the gangsters. And I learned how to do it in prison. It changed everything. But today, if ever before, we've got to be willing to not just listen to the other and speak to the other, but become the other. I think some people are wanting things to go back to business as usual. It's like, come on, man, we've blown off some steam. Okay, we get it. There's a problem. Now, can we go back? Everybody wants that. There's no pandemic. We want to go back. Man, these things are important. However, and I'm talking to the older generation and maybe people that look kind of like me. Well, we ain't going back. I mean, that's pretty obvious. The world has changed. And now it's a young people's movement. I want to ask you, have we become, or are we becoming, our parents? Every older generation hates on the young. And are we doing it again? Those of us that are in our 50s and 60s are headed that way. Man, are we hating on the young without really trying to see them and feel them so that we can have their back. The Gen Z generation, man, this young generation of young millennials that have grown up seeing champions change the world with their minds, with ideas. They're the ones that have grown up with that. This Gen Z, young millennial culture, they are the movement. This is their time, and it's time for us to rally around them. You know, the pandemic, it's amazing to watch the series of events that led up to this day. I mean, all of a sudden, boom, there was something that none of us have ever experienced. And really, the world in 100 years has never, and they've never experienced it on 24-hour news cable, streaming live, seeing this thing. Never before. And so the world shut down, the economy shut down. We realized our health was fragile. Our money was fragile. You know, our relationships with family, fragile. And it brought the world together for a minute. And we began to start thinking about the other. We realized that brothers and sisters in tough, war-torn countries have been going through this their whole life. We realized that in the poor third world, they've been facing pandemics their whole lives. And now all of a sudden it came to our soil. And it brought us together. And then just a couple months later, spark, George Floyd. We all saw it, and it hurt us. It was so agonizingly slow, and it captured the imagination of the world. Pandemic brought us together in a conversation, and now people are marching in the streets, not just here in America, but all around the world. There is an uprising, and no more can the powers that be, or people that look like me, avoid the problem. We can't just go back to, okay, we realize it's there, but we got more important things to do. We got to build an economy. Yeah, we do. We got to protect the world from the pandemic. Yeah, we do. But this thing right here, it ain't going away. Okay, we can't put Pandora back in the box. Man, it's out. And it's time to talk about it. We can't deny it anymore. The whole world is protesting. If we say, what's the big deal? Come on now. Then we've got to look that this just isn't an American thing. The whole world has been feeling this and watching America. America's an experiment. So what are we going to do with this time? Are we going to waste our pain? Or are we going to see the young generation? Last week, I talked about 3 groups. You know, the criminals that were tearing stuff up, the law enforcement trying to keep that from happening, and the young people caught in the middle. And man, I didn't hate on them, but I called them out a little bit. A generation grown up on screens, raised by the media, and we as grown folks, we let them. In a lot of ways, man, they have raised themselves in a world where we used to have to depend on the older generation. They don't. They grew up in a YouTube, Google world where they can figure out things. I don't think about technology as much as they do. This is their time. This is their moment. People are talking about the 60s. 1968, where all the cities in the country were on fire after they killed the dreamer. They killed all the dreamers in the 60s. They killed a president. They killed his brother. They killed Martin. They killed Malcolm. Man, they killed the dreamers. But the question was, did they kill the dream? If you kill the dreamer, do you kill the dream? And it certainly appeared like they did, because things went violent after Dr. King left. And everything he lived for and everything he died for changed me as a young man. And it set me on a course to try to understand things that maybe some of my white brothers and sisters don't understand. And so last week I talked about those 3. But this week I want to talk about the young people that you're seeing mobilize and march. In the 60s, it was not grown folks and old folks marching the streets. It was the young, all the way down to the 10, 12, 14-year-olds that marched into hell in Birmingham. It was the young, white, black, and brown students that got on buses knowing that they were going to get hurt and beat, and the buses burned on the other end of their trip. Do we have those kind of guts? Man, they were the ones that sat down at the counters and allowed themselves to be just abused and sprayed with bug spray and hot coffee in their face, and yet they endured it, and they did not swing. And they went to prison, or at least to jail, for a righteous cause. But it was the young people, and it wasn't just brothers and sisters of color. And don't get it twisted, Dr. King, he was not celebrated in those days. Not like today. He's revered. We have a beautiful monument that it's gotten hurt in this protest world. But man, they feared Martin. He was a problem, man. He was the irritant. He was the voice, but he had a plan. And so where's Dr. King today? They killed the dream, or did they kill the dream? And I've been working with these young people for years, and here has been one of my messages. What do you stand for? I said, this young generation raised on media, you've never had a movement, you've never had a cause. But in the 60s, it was civil rights, and then it was anti-war, and then it was gay rights and women's lib and voting rights, and it was just a time for young people to stand up. And many grown folks that are watching this, man, you felt different as an 18, 20, 22-year-old. Man, you might have been ready to march. You believed there was a better day. But man, we got squashed and we grew up. And this generation, they haven't had one of their own. So I've been asking, hey, what's your movement? How are you going to change things? And I thought this, and I didn't know. Do they care enough? Do they have the stomach for it? And do they have the staying power? Are they willing to last and get back up? And over this last week, I've been paying attention, and I'm starting to change my mind a little bit about this young generation. It turns out they do care. It turns out they do have the stomach for it. It turns out that maybe they know some things that we didn't think they know. They're a wartime generation. Their whole life has been war. They're a terrorism generation. Their whole life has been terrorism. Their number one fear, when polled, kids say, you know what we're afraid of? We're afraid of going to school and the school getting shot up. So we can hate on them. I asked a bunch of grown folks, important folks, I said, in a big audience, there was judges and cops and teachers and, you know, police force, and it was Chamber of Commerce, a community event, and I got to speak, and I said, Generation Z, what do you think? Just give me a word. And this is a large audience, and they started shouting out, irresponsible, undisciplined, lazy, cupcake, entitled, irresponsible. They don't care about nothing. And finally I had to cut them off and say, whoa, man, can you imagine how the young generation feels? When we think they are that, do you think they're going to listen to us? When we hate on them all the time? So I ask the young people, I say, who do you think we are? Go ahead and be honest with me. The kids trust me, and I listen and I learn. And they said, the older generation, our parents' generation, are haters and hypocrites. All they do is they hate on us, and then they do the same things. Get off that phone, and then they see us on the phone all the time. They hear us talking. They hear us slandering, they hear us gossiping, they hear us putting the other side down, because it's all we talk about a lot of times, and they are listening and we don't even think they are, because they got their beats in. They're playing video games, they're on their social media, but they're watching and they're listening, and it appears we've failed them. What if they are the ones we've been waiting for? What if the grown folks are sitting around going, I can't wait, I can't imagine the state of affairs, man. These kids are this and these kids are that. And we're looking at the news saying the world is going to hell. What are we going to do about it? And so we're complaining about it. And then this young generation begins to raise up and use their voices. Are we going to embrace them? I got to be honest. I got two kids that are 24 and 21. They're beautiful. Terry and I are so proud of them, but they are right in the midst of this thing. And my daughter right now is out in Portland, and she's been involved in those things. And as a father, it scares me. Man, we want the young generation to have a dream. We want them to stand for something, march for something, care about something. And when they do, we resist. I can't speak for you, but I was afraid. And 10 years ago, when I was raising my daughter, you know, I wanted her to be a dreamer. I wanted her to have a voice. I wanted her to be courageous and change the world. And now all of a sudden she's got her time and she's marching in, and it scared me. And I began to resist it. But she's a soldier. And then I found out what they were doing. You know what I assumed? That they were joining in on a lot of the things that we're seeing on TV. And then I found out I was wrong. Man, they're taking water to protesters. And the other side too. And then I saw something that blew my mind. I saw a bunch of young white sisters standing in a line, arm in arm, between the protesters and the police force. And I said, look at that. I'm not hating on that. And my daughter's a part of that. And I had to change. And I said, baby, I'm proud of you. Man, let us help you. See, they can't do this without us. Young people are the movement. They always have been. Look out through the history of the world. Revolutions were young folks, not old folks with, walkers. We need their zeal and enthusiasm and energy. Man, they changed the world in the 60s when I was a little boy. And now all of a sudden they have woken from their slumber. They have moved the world. There's people marching in Iran and Syria, down in South Africa and South America, all through Europe. They're standing up for George Floyd and for racism, systemic racism, which is not an American problem. It's a world problem, and the world is rising up. And Black Lives Matter happen to be still around and relevant, mobilized, taken to the streets. How do you feel about that? How did you feel in 1968? Did you join the movement? Did you march? Or did you sit back? Man, we got to be careful how we judge these young people. Here's what they do. They know how to communicate. Instantly, their whole lives, they've had that. That is a strength now. They know how to find answers on YouTube. Man, for anything, that's a strength now because they can study their history. Imagine if they knew their history. Imagine if they had a strategy. Man, imagine if they were able to learn from their elders. Good Lord, they could be the ones that we've been waiting for. Man, if we hate on them and we try to stifle them and we try to shut them down, man, we're going to lose them. And man, what if they are the ones we've been praying for? Can you imagine? Man, they're finally rising up, and we need people of color, people of less color, young, old, to embrace this young generation and help them see what they could become. Because this is their time. Man, they've earned it. They've been paying attention. Turns out they haven't been sleeping. They are not lazy. They get up at 6, do school all day, extracurriculars because they got to make a 4.0. And then they come down, grab a little food at home and a little shower. Then they hit the books 2 or 3 hours a day. And then they call it a day at midnight. I say, grown folks, do we hold that kind of schedule? Because they're pushed. They're stressed. They're anxious. And finally, they've got somebody and something that's inspiring them, molding them together. Man, maybe they're not what we think they are. Maybe they learn how to communicate. They can make an idea go viral. And see, we've never had that. I'm the last year of a baby boomer. I don't get that. I don't think like they do. But I want to know. I don't communicate or get engaged or be entertained like they do. They've made an art form out of their world, and now it's a strength. They're connected collectively. They love ideas, and they care more than we did at their age. Did you care about politics at 17, 21? I didn't. Did you care about the environment at 21, 25? I didn't. Did you care about the world and social justice? Did you care about those that are being oppressed as much as they do? I didn't. Why? We didn't have an information world. We had Encyclopedia Britannica. How in the world did we get anywhere with an atlas and an encyclopedia? And, good luck. But we figured it out. These guys are prepared. Man, we have prepared them. We got to support them. We got to encourage them. I know it's scary. I feel you as a parent. But man, have we raised them to change the world, or have we raised them to shut up and be quiet? Because that's what generations that look like us tend to do with the young people. They've got fresh ideas. They've got fresh eyes. They've got a voice that they've never used. Can you imagine? You can't speak, and finally you have an audience. My son tells me, man, they communicate. They're mobilized. They know when the protests are. They're on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. They've made an art of taking an idea and taking it viral. So they're impressionable. Yeah, they're very impressionable, just like me and you were. They need new impressions. So what if they studied King and Gandhi and Mandela? What if they studied Maya Angelou? What if they studied the civil rights movement? What if we encouraged that? What if we talked around the dinner table? What if you asked the 21-year-old, how do you feel? What do you think? What's important to you? What do you think the solutions are? What if the older folks started asking the right questions and listening, and then asking more questions and listening, and then relating to them and say, I feel you, son. When I was young, man, I wanted to be like you. When I was young, I was you. Man, when I was young, I thought I knew everything too. Turns out, I don't even know everything today I thought I knew. What if we really get them to buy in on the plan that we make instead of telling them how it's going to be? Man, this is a time. If we try to stifle them, they'll act out. If we try to silence them, man, they will shout louder. If we try to lock them down, get them to hit in the streets, they'll figure out a way to get there. This is their time. Can you become the other? Can you feel Black Lives Matter and realize, man, if you were a brother or sister of more color, how would you feel about it? If you had stuff pent up inside of you for years, your whole life, and you never felt like anybody cared, how would you be feeling now? Would you use your voice? Would you be a little pissed? Would you be hurt and feel like, what did it take? We saw Michael Brown, we saw Trayvon, we saw, what's the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And this one was so brutal, it got our attention. I think we ought to look at Black Lives Matter a different way. As if you were black, how would you feel? Be careful. Brothers and sisters of less color, be careful what you minimize. Be careful with what you judge. Please be careful with what you say. And last week, I said something that I meant, and it was, leaders of more color, be careful you don't pour gas on the flame. And then I didn't take it to the other side. President, be careful you don't pour gas on this flame. We need a uniter. We need somebody to say, we don't know. But man, more than ever, we've got to have somebody that can bring us together. And I don't like talking politics, and I'm not talking about a 2020 election. I'm talking about right now. We got to be careful not to throw gas on this flame, because we're trying to get the kids to be peaceful. Man, don't be taunting the cops. Well, what if we're taunting one another on Facebook? Man, don't be picking up rocks. What if we're throwing rocks at one another politically? Man, we're hypocrites a lot of times, telling the kids what not to do. And then when they start raising up and doing what we've told them they should do, sometimes we want to shut them down and say, man, you don't know what you're doing. I was guilty of that. I'm open to changing my mind. I want to become the other. I want to feel you. Back in the day, I'm talking about way back, ancient culture, the elders were held very high. And the young people would sit around the fire, and the elders would tell stories that had wisdom. And they would help the young people to understand their history, to understand the responsibility, and to be accountable for their decisions and actions. That was old cultures. We're a young culture. Man, we're a young country. We're like spoiled teenagers, got a bunch of money and think we know everything. And I love America, don't get me wrong. I believe in her, but maybe this is what we've needed, a new movement. Please, give them a chance. Give them a voice. Ask them for help. What if we asked young people for help? I have seen in the most desperate situations, I asked the Crips and the Bloods for help, and then they start working together in a prison. I asked the White Aryan Brotherhood to work together with the Black militant Muslim, and they come together. I've seen it not once, but countless times. If you ask people to help, they will help. But man, we think we know better. We hate on them, and I'm not saying you do. There's a lot of people out there that are saying, amen, we love this generation. We're their champions. We're their advocates. We are their celebrators. But there's some of us, and I hear you a lot, we become haters. My question is, have we become our parents? Lastly, they learn so fast. That's a good thing. They spread the news. That's a good thing. Man, they share things that are shocking. That's not a bad thing anymore. They've learned how to use their technology and their music and their games and their media, and now finally they have a voice. If we get in the conversation And we've got to earn the right. Don't think that we can just shout orders at this generation. No, they're mobilized now. They care about this thing. But if they go back to business as usual because we kind of lead them that way, shame on us. But if we engage them and we earn the right, and here's how I believe you earn the right. You seek first to understand the other. You find common ground with the other. You walk a mile with the other before you judge. You listen to the other. You speak compassionately to the other. When you're wrong, you make it right. What if we had some people that stood up, parents, to say, I've been wrong. Please give me another chance. And treat your enemy with dignity and respect, even when you disagree, especially if you disagree. I'll close out with a young man that I love to death. I hadn't seen him in forever, but he made an impact on me. I was doing a program at a school, and this was the day after we had prepared for them to come together and sign their peace pledge and live by those principles, to treat the other student compassionately, to include those who have been shut out. And so they're signing their pledge, and they've got their 40 days of peace, and it's a celebratory. We're taking pictures, and there's one kid in the back, and he's sitting there, and he's just kind of got a mean mug on. He's been watching me all day. He's got kind of big sag, his pants kind of busted down. He's got a white oversized t-shirt, a red hat kind of turned sideways, real nice kicks. And he's a cool kid, but his eyes are just blazed. And he comes up after all the kids have left, and he said, Mr. Kid, I can't sign your peace pledge. And I said, why not? He said, I'm involved in things that I got to do. I sell drugs. I've got me a little crew. We have an issue. I can't be a peacemaker. Man, I got to deal with this real life situation. And I said, you want to tell me more? He goes, no. And I'm thinking, why did this kid wait around to come talk to an old dude that he doesn't want to talk to? They're dying to be heard. They're dying to be heard. And now they're mad. Maybe they're mad because they haven't been heard. And we have been saying, you ain't listening to me. You're not seeing me. Well, maybe it goes both ways. And so I said, young man, play a game with me. His name was Justin. And I said, here's the game. It's an imagination game. How old do you want to be when you die? How long you want to live? And he said, and this scares me, he said, shoot, where I live, 25 would be pretty good for me. 25-year expectancy. And that made me sad. And I said, I didn't say how long do you think you're going to live? I said, how long you want to live? And he chose a number that was so high. He said 60. And I was like, 60? Dang, man, I'm in my 50s. And so I said, all right, cool, 60. Well, let's go into the future to that 60-year-old. What are you doing? He goes, what do you mean? I said, what's your job? He said, now? I said, no, it's 60. And he said, anything? I said, yeah, it's an imagination game. You can go anywhere you want. And so he said, hip-hop producer. And I'm like, okay, cool. I said, you big or little time? He said, big time. I said, cool. What city are you living in? He goes, anywhere? I said, come on, man, anywhere. He said, Miami. I said, you been there? And he said, no. I said, it's a cool city. So are you living in a high-rise condo or a gated community since you're a big-wig hip-hop producer? He said, high-rise condo. And I'm like, cool, okay. I said, what's your lady look like? He goes, now? I said, no, man, 60. And he said, that's the brother of color. He said, fine, Latino. And I'm like, all right, I see you. And so I'm like, you got kids? And he goes, that's where it gets good. He said, I got grandkids. And I'm like, whoa. What you driving? Maybach. Okay, so now he's got this loaded life, high-rise condo, fine wife, kids, grandkids, driving a nice car, doing what he loves. I said, okay, you see it? Now take a snapshot, file it in your mind, and then come on back to 18. So he travels back in time to 18. Now he's got a global perspective. And I say, what you want to do about this little beef? And he said, man, I guess it's not as big a deal as I thought. He said, give me that thing. He signed the pledge, and he bounced off. Next week, he comes popping up to me, and I don't even recognize him. I'm like, who are you? Because he's got slacks on, dress shirt, belt tucked in, nice shoes, no hat, eyes bright. And I said, Justin, what happened? And he said, and I quote, I'm working on my business plan. And I said, oh my, This young generation just needs a vision. They just need imagination. They need role models. And I'm sorry, that makes me, they need role models of humility, role models of compassion, role models that are willing to say, I was wrong, role models that are going to show them, and who knows, maybe even march with them. And I'm not talking to anybody that's already doing these things. I'm saying, come on, especially people that look like me, let's rise up and quit saying things that really hurt the other side and that make them feel like, man, you're minimized. We're going to go back to business as usual, but we'll try to be a little better. Young people, get back in your lane. This ain't your time. You're tearing up stuff. No, they're not. The Antifa's tearing up stuff, gangsters. That's just a different kind of gang. They're mobilized. They have a strategy. What if they have a better strategy than we do for our kids? You know they're recruiting on college campuses. And so, man, they're recruiting heavy. They have a strategy. They place bricks. They have people on different streets. They know when, they know where, they're communicating. What about us? Man, we gonna let Antifa take our children? They're recruiting heavy. Or we gonna get involved and be the elders that give them wisdom around the campfire, mobilize an army that changes the world. And when we're old and they're taking care of us, we'll find out they were the ones that we were waiting for. You've been praying for change? Well, maybe God answered your prayer. My last challenge is have a talk today with a young person. Ask questions, listen, relate, and then get them to buy into whatever you think is next. And we can learn from them. We need them. They can't do this without us. And we can't do it without them. Maybe it's an old and young thing. It is a black and white thing, but it's also a black and brown thing. It's also a black in every other color and white in every other color, Christian, Muslim, Jew, rich, poor. This is a human thing, and the whole world is marching. Let's don't waste our pain. Let's don't waste this pandemic. Let's not waste these protests. Let's change things. Get involved in the conversation. Bring an open mind and be a part of the solution. Anybody can critique the problem. You can become an expert in what you hate, an expert in all that is wrong, an expert thinking we know better. And this young generation, maybe they've been paying attention, and just maybe they've been talking about things on those phones that we don't know about. That's what I'm figuring out. These young people are ready. They're primed. Imagine if they just had leadership. Pray for Black Lives Matter. Pray for officers, please. Pray for our elected officials. Pray for our president. Please. The one I follow said to pray for your enemies. Turn the other cheek. No nation ever changed violently, not for the good, not lasting. Let's let these young people show us the way. Unless we change and become like the children, we'll never see the kingdom of God. Let's pray for these people. Look at your kids different. I'm having a hard time closing out today. If you like this, share it. Sharing is caring. If you have a comment, share it. I want to know your opinion. Change my mind. I'm open to that today. If you like this, subscribe to Kit Cummings on YouTube. Let's keep this rolling. Let's get this thing going. I love you. We need you. Use your voice. Don't hate on these young people. They might just show us the way. God bless you guys. I'll see you next Monday at 9 a.m. for part 3. Peace.